We've got many great ways to narrow your list to get exactly what you're looking for. One of my favorite is the website keywords filter. So that's where we're going to start in this tutorial. Website keywords is a process for Coldlytics to structure what you would do if you were going through this list company by company and checking the website to find out if it's relevant to you. And how do you do that? You open a website and you read the content and see, oh, they're involved in this type of plumbing, or in fact, they're not a plumbing business at all. They're a wholesaler. They provide plumbing and electrical supplies. That's not the type of business we want. And you would move to the next list or the next lead in your list. So rather than having you do that on your own, Coldlytics will take the responsibility to do so. So you could exclude a keyword like wholesale and perhaps focus on a word like install and make sure that does appear on the website. Or you could look for something like book now appear on the website like this. And so this is a fantastic way to really dial in your list. And if you want more in-depth help with this, feel free to reach out to us over the live chat, and we're happy to help you specify maybe some of the parameters that will really zero this in. But this is my favorite filter in the platform. Now, we have tons of other options and you can stack these filters, but the thing to keep in mind, if you're adding multiple filters, the universe of total leads available to you goes like this. You've already defined a region, that narrowed it in. Then you defined an industry. We got much smaller there. Then you defined the number of decision makers, types of decision makers you want. Again, smaller within those organizations. And then from there, you've now said on all of those websites, we have to start excluding things, or the company size has to get smaller. So it just starts dwindling down. Once we've qualified the company as a good fit, which is a very important step, we then have to find who those decision makers are, and we have to validate at least the email address for that person in order for us to give you that back as a lead. So it's very important to keep that in mind, that if you're stacking a lot of different filters, sometimes it's better not to filter the list this way, but it can be done in the deliver step by saying, hey, I want this data. I do want to know if they advertise on Google. I do want to know their website speed. And I certainly want to know where that business is located, but I don't care if they're anywhere in the United States or if they're in Texas specifically, that's fine with me. So that's when you would use data points instead of the filtering options here. Going to our next filter, we're going to look at revenue. Revenue for businesses below $5 million is quite inaccurate in the world of data. If you read the fine print of many of the public companies or even smaller businesses like our own who do provide revenue data, you'll learn that it's typically modeled data, because no small business is out there advertising what revenue they did last year. It's not generally public information unless they're in a very specific sector or a public company. Therefore, it becomes modeled information, and we have to go based on outside inputs to get to that step. So you certainly can say you want them to do $500,000 or more a year in revenue and no more than 5 million. But my preference is actually to use the headcount filter. The headcount filter is a fantastic way to size up a business, because if they are payrolling people, there is money coming into that business, or they're not going to have people on payroll. So this is a very good filter option, opposed to doing something like the company size. And if you need to suggest parameters that aren't here, there's a final input in the very last step of building your list with Coldlytics where you can say, hey, actually, you can just drop that from 10 down to 5 employees. That would be fine. So that is how you should use the headcount filter, perhaps instead of revenue. But if you're over 5 million in revenue and your preferences, then that information becomes much more publicly available in many of those cases. We're going to step back out here for a moment. We're going to open up firmographics. So we've talked about revenue and headcount. Date established is another great filter you can use to determine when that company was founded, or in other words, how old that business should be in order for them to qualify to work with you. So if you don't want newer businesses, then you would look for a business. Right now it's 2024. Maybe you want somebody who's older than 4 years. You would go up to 2020. If they're founded after 2020, maybe you don't want to work with them. And the inverse of that could be true. There could be no maximum, and you could say, listen, I want them to just be at least founded in 2020. If they're older than that, they're set in their ways. They've got a POS system. We're not going to sell them ours. Statistically, they make that decision in the first 5 years. So that is our date established filter. If we move down in the list, we're looking now at some more very marketing related data points. And there's a few that will be more generic for any type of person who wants to target a specific lead. Some of these are very specific to marketing people and marketing agencies, such as the number of Google reviews on a business and the Google review score that they average as well. And you can provide a range. And I always encourage people to go a little bit broader than what you think because of what I mentioned earlier in this video. And you don't want to make your list too small. And oftentimes if it's 3.5 stars versus 4 stars, you'd still work with the 3.5 star business or even a 3-star, because perhaps it only takes 3 or 4 extra reviews for them to become that 4.5 star business that you prefer to work with anyway. So you don't want to shoot yourself in the foot by narrowing this too much, but it can be a very helpful tool. If we come back out here and go a little bit further, we've got Google Maps search position. So when you're looking at a list of businesses on Google and you searched for plumbers in Atlanta, do you want them to show up in the first 3 positions and then sell them SEO services to say, hey, we think you should rank better for your SEO for plumbing in Atlanta? It's like, well, I'm already in the map pack. I'm in the first 3 spots. Why would I pay you to do that again? Nothing's going to change. Okay, so let's set this to position 4 or lower. So lower than or equal to position 4. So they're outside of the map pack. Or you could play it safe and go position 8 or lower. So they've got some serious opportunity to move up the ranks. That's what this is all about. Back in Affirmative Graphics again, excuse me. We're looking at the franchise or national chain filter. This is how you can limit your list to a multi-location business or a single location business. We look for things on the website that identify multiple locations, such as the term locations, just as an example of one way that we identify businesses are part of a franchise or a national chain or have other locations in the business. In some cases, you may want to look for those businesses because doing work with one of them means you can get referred into the broader franchise and work with the entire franchise and be marketed as a vendor to that platform. If we come back out here, we have one left in this list, and that is the advertising status. You can say that you prefer businesses who advertise on Facebook, yes, or Google, yes, or LinkedIn. And if they advertise on one of these platforms, if you're a marketing agency, big green light, they spend money on marketing. This is exactly what you want. This is the best buying signal, in my opinion, that's publicly kept accountable. You can find this by looking at the pixel on the website, and by knowing that, you have their advertiser status of if they've spent money on ads. It doesn't matter if they spent money on ads last year or today, because they believe in the concept of advertising. So you're not selling them on the concept of what you do, you're selling them on why you're going to help them get results. And that is the second sale you have to make. In the sales world, there's always 2 sales. The first is the concept of what you're selling. The second is that you're the right person to sell it to them. And this bypasses that for digital marketers. If we go into technographics now, we can look for technologies that tell you something about the business. And we're working on a big update that will give you even more control. So if you have a specific product such as Service Titan or Schedule Engine or Go High Level or Calendly that you're interested in focusing on businesses who use that type of tool, you can specify that and message us to find out how. But for now, we have a very select option of e-commerce related functions here. So any e-commerce technology on the website, if you want an e-commerce list, this is the way to go. Detected. Or if you want to exclude businesses doing these things too, you could always play it that way. Then we've got a few others in the list, such as WordPress or people who run Google Analytics. Again, green light signal. You don't set up Google Analytics by mistake. If you're a digital marketer or selling digital marketing services, the Google Analytics detection is a great way to know, and recommended as a data point more traditionally than a filter, if a prospect is more likely to say yes to you and buy your services. So if we come back out to technographics again, we go to page speed next. Again, excellent data point, in my opinion, unless you're running a very specific campaign around this pain point and everything you do is about optimizing page speed, which is probably not if you're an SEO, then you could limit the list to people who have slow websites. And sometimes if you just have such a broad category that you serve, like you serve plumbing and HVAC across the US, and you're just looking for some way to narrow it down, then it could make sense to start stacking in some of these guys. And I recommend things like 8 seconds or slower, because that way you don't have to come in and get them to a 2-second load speed, but you can get them from 8 seconds to 6 seconds by maybe optimizing some of their image sizes instead of having to restructure the entire WordPress site that they built themselves. If we jump back out to technographics, we go down to ad networks. Last option around advertising is not relevant to 99% of people, so I'm going to touch on this very quickly. If you specialize in helping people generate more revenue through platforms like AdSense. So people draw traffic into their site, ads get clicked, and that's how that website owner or your client gets paid. And you help them do that. That's what this is all about. It tells you, hey, this person monetizes their website, their content, using one of these 4 platforms. Again, most people don't care about that. So we're going to skip to the last most important one for businesses who have spent a lot of money on building very targeted lists themselves, often in-house or with their own employees, the suppression list. If you have a list that you don't want us to duplicate on, so in other words, we find leads that you've already paid for sourcing yourself and you've already got emails and done sales activity for, or just perhaps it's a list of your own clients, provide us with a list, just like we show in some of our other tutorials, on Google Sheets of either the website URLs for those businesses or the email addresses of the individuals if it's an individual exclusion level you want us to apply. We will check against all the leads we provide, make sure it does not appear in your list that we're working on for you. If it does, we'll remove it and you'll never have to pay for something that you've already got done. So these are the different ways that you can filter your list. And last but not least, you're now going to move over to the deliver step and you'll see what to do in that video.